The first thing the house-sitter noticed was the smell, faint at the edge of the living room, as if something had gone bad somewhere no one could see. The second thing was the flies. They kept drifting toward the hearth and circling back, stubborn, like they had found a source. The fireplace itself looked untouched. No ash, no soot on the grate, just a black opening and a cold, dead quiet behind it. The house-sitter leaned closer and listened, expecting a draft, a hollow whistle, anything. Instead, there was nothing, a stillness that felt heavy. A flashlight beam swept across the firebox and tilted upward into the chimney. The light caught the rough brick, then a shape that shouldn't have been there. Cloth pressed against stone, then the pale curve of a leg wedged so tight it looked fused to the flue. The call went out fast. Bakersfield police and firefighters arrived and crowded into the living room, radios hissing, boots on tile, voices dropping as soon as they saw the beam of light disappear into the chimney. Someone pulled the damper wider and aimed a stronger light up the shaft. The beam revealed more of her, jammed above the firebox, turned wrong, trapped in a narrow vertical tunnel of brick. Even before they reached her, the scene made one fact clear. She had not come from inside the house. She had come from above. They identified her as Dr. Jacquelyn Kotarac, 49 years old. Before the confirmation, the scene held its breath in that awful space between suspicion and certainty. Officers asked the house-sitter basic questions: when they last entered the home, whether anyone else had a key, whether they had heard anything in the nights before. Then a firefighter climbed to the roof line to look at the top of the chimney. The cap was off. The flue was open. The path was visible in a way the body itself already suggested. She had been missing for days. By the time she was found, the air inside the house carried the unmistakable signs of decomposition, and the firefighters' movements became careful, methodical, part rescue protocol, part recovery, because the time window for saving her was already gone. Jacquelyn had last been seen on Wednesday night, August 25, 2010, when she went to the home of William Moody in Bakersfield. People who later spoke about their relationship described it as on again, off again. Whatever the history between them, that night ended with a door that stayed closed. Investigators said Moody did not want to see her. He left the house through a back door and spent the night elsewhere, leaving the place dark and locked behind him. From the outside, it would have looked like a simple refusal, lights out, a house that wouldn't answer. But Jacquelyn did not leave. Police said the evidence suggested she tried to force her way in first. A shovel was part of what they found, and the damage fit the idea of someone testing windows or doors, looking for a weak spot. When that failed, the next choice was the roof. A chimney can look like an entrance when you're standing above it. The opening seems direct. The drop seems clean. You imagine your feet hitting the hearth, the room just a few feet away. But chimneys are built to vent smoke, not carry a human body. The flue narrows, the brick is uneven, the interior is rough, and the angles change. Once you commit, gravity does the rest, and the only way out is the way you came. Sometime that night, Jacquelyn climbed a ladder to the roof. Investigators said she removed the chimney cap. Then she lowered herself in feet first, believing she could slide down into the house. At some point, she became stuck. When firefighters examined the flue, they could see how tight the space had become. There was no room to turn around, no leverage. Any movement would have scraped skin against brick and tightened the trap. If she tried to brace her hands against the sides, the friction would have burned. If she tried to push upward, she would have been fighting gravity with almost no space to extend her legs. And if she tried to drop further, the narrowing could have locked her in even more. Investigators later said it was unknown whether she was intoxicated at the time she climbed onto the roof, but police noted she had been drinking earlier that evening at a restaurant. Whether the alcohol affected her judgment or simply sat in her system as the hours passed, the physical problem inside the flue didn't change. Brick does not bend. The human body does not fit where it cannot fit. From the outside, the next 3 days looked ordinary. A neighborhood street, a locked home, no broken windows, no open doors. But inside that chimney, time would have moved in a brutal, inch-by-inch way. Breathing would have been shallow. The chest can't expand fully when the body is pinned. Panic makes oxygen feel farther away. The throat tightens. The smallest shift in weight becomes a decision. Try to move and risk wedging deeper, or stay still and hope someone hears something that may never carry past Brick. No one did. Her body was found on Saturday, 3 days after she went into the chimney, after the house sitter noticed what didn't belong and finally looked up. Once responders understood what had happened, the room became a work site. Firefighters repositioned themselves, working from below, evaluating how to reach her without making the chimney collapse in a way that would bury her further. They checked the roofline, confirmed the cap had been removed, and traced the route she had taken. Ladder, rooftop, open flue. Inside, every movement sent fine brick dust down into the firebox. Lights glared off the soot-stained interior. Tools clinked against masonry. It took time, because the chimney was a narrow cage, and the body was wedged where hands could not simply reach and pull. The approach had to be controlled, inch by inch, to avoid breaking bricks loose onto her or shifting her deeper into the flue. When they finally recovered her, the reality of the position hit harder than any headline ever could. She had entered from the roof, feet first, and she had died inside the chimney before anyone realized where she was. The autopsy would later state the cause of death as mechanical asphyxia. In plain terms, her body had been trapped in a way that prevented breathing until breathing stopped. There were no dramatic injuries that explained it in a single glance. It was pressure and confinement and the slow failure of the body when the chest cannot work the way it needs to. For investigators, the facts stayed stubbornly simple. The access point was above. The cap had been removed. There was no sign she had been forced. The house had remained locked. The path into the chimney was a choice, and the chimney became the trap. For everyone who heard the story afterward, it was harder to hold on to simple. A doctor, a grown woman. A moment of emotion so strong it pushed her toward a plan that depended on the chimney being a straight passage instead of a narrowing shaft. A locked door that became a roof ladder that became a drop that became an ending. And at the center of it, a living room that looked normal from the street, while just above the fireplace, inside brick walls meant for smoke, a human body was hidden in silence until the house itself gave her away. In the reports that followed, there was no mystery about where she was found or how she got there. The only mystery was why the chimney looked for one night like a doorway. It wasn't. It was a flue built to carry smoke upward, and it became the last place she would ever move. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.